Welcome to your Mental Health Matters podcast, a community-minded mental health podcast providing real-life mental health talks supporting parents, educators, and students.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Your Mental Health Matters. Today we're talking about winter blues, depression, and hope for 2022. Fittingly, I've got a winter cup here with some snowflakes, and I'm ready for today. Also, I feel like it's about minus 50 out today.
It's cold.
Right? With
It's
the wind
the
chill
wind.
about minus 30. So I feel like we're just in the perfect season to talk about today's episode. So welcome, Chantel and Mel. How you all doing?
Good.
Cold.
Yes,
Cold. Yes.
I cannot warm up. It is that time of the year where it is just so cold, hey? And you just have to just hunker down and just get through it.
Well, let's talk about that time of the year. It's the time of year where it's like winter blues. We're feeling kind of blah. It's like, when will it get warmer? When will it get lighter out?
Oh, the darkness. Yes, the darkness.
It's such a big piece of it, right? Because we know with more darkness is we are not getting outside. We are not doing all the things we usually do when we're, the sun is hitting us. We're getting that beautiful sunshine. We're getting all of those feel-good chemicals blasting our body, and we're getting endorphins for doing things outside. We don't have that in winter, and it does cause some kind of depressive symptoms, right? Those low points.
Those winter blues.
Yes.
Right? Because it's not really that depressive state, but it does take a toll on your energy and on your mood. And I think it's common for most people.
Right.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
especially living so far north. We got shorter days, we have colder days. So I think that a lot of people in this region actually experience it. And I'm not sure that everybody actually knew what it was called.
Very
Right.
true.
So I'm really glad that we're bringing this topic to our audience today, because I think that it's something that needs to be talked about, and it's not talked about a lot.
Totally, and we'll get to the hope part too, but before we talk about that, let's dial into the perfect storm of winter blues and depression. Tell us a little bit about what people experience this time of year. I know we mentioned kind of the darkness, the circadian rhythms, production of melatonin. Tell us about some of the science behind that, Mel and Chantel.
Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So we know that with the shorter days, our sleep cycle can definitely get disrupted. So we can feel a lot more lethargic, low energy, less serotonin flowing, which is those feel-good
Yep.
chemicals.
Yeah.
And then, what was the other one? Melatonin.
Yes.
Oh, yes. The cycle of melatonin as well gets disrupted in shorter days. When you think about it, our bodies are prone to start producing that melatonin when it starts to get dark.
It's getting darker. Melatonin is produced.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just something that our bodies are so beautiful, and naturally it does it.
That's right.
And so I don't know about you guys, but first when that short day comes, I'm like, oh my goodness, it is so late. I need to go to bed, and
I'm
it's
so
like
tired.
5.
Yeah.
Yes. But the melatonin is kicked in, and
Yeah.
that's those sleepy hormones, those sleepy chemicals that go into our brain and make us feel exhausted and ready to sleep. But what happens if it's light and then all of a sudden it's dark and we're in dark for maybe, how many hours of the day are we dark here in Fort McMurray?
I feel like it's when you wake up, when you go to bed, most of the day,
It
you get a few
really
light hours.
It's
Absolutely.
really sad,
You
right?
go to work in the dark, you come home in the dark,
Yes.
and it's just that constant darkness and the coldness, and not a lot of what I'm a homebody, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Me
So
too.
I don't like to leave my house in this weather. And even coming here tonight, I'm like, I'm used to being in Newfoundland, and we cancel things
Right.
due to snow, right? I'm like, do we cancel things?
We don't cancel things
No.
here. We work right through it.
Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
like, I just want to be at home, covered up.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a huge piece too, is that we isolate ourselves more in the wintertime.
That's it. That's a
And-
big piece.
And now because of the pandemic as well, I don't know about you guys, but I use it as an excuse sometimes.
Right.
Oh, I can't COVID.
Yeah.
I can't COVID. Yeah, not a good idea. And so it becomes very isolating. And I think sometimes we need to withdraw and we need to take care of ourselves. But I think a really big part is being able to reflect on how you're feeling in that alone time.
It's very true.
Being able to be aware of it, because alone time can be great. But if you're not feeling better when you're doing it, that might be a sign
Yeah.
to get out and connect, right?
Very true. Everything in moderation. A little bit of
Yes.
alone time, we all need the downtime, but a lot of alone time, you can feel more down,
That's
get more
right.
discouraged, get more depressed too. That's just another layer. And you talk about the isolation, even the stress of the season, as we go through the holidays and different things. For some people, it could be financial, environmental, changes of relationship and family structure. It really is that perfect storm.
It really is. And you're looking at the relational piece you just mentioned there. A lot of people from Fort McMurray are not from Fort McMurray.
Exactly.
They're from
Yeah.
all different parts of the world. So they say it takes a village to raise a family.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have your village with you.
Yeah.
You don't have your
Yeah.
people with you. And so you're left to do it by yourself in a community, feeling very isolated and not feeling you could reach out at a time when things are really overwhelming. So you hunker down, you're kind of in your own little silo. And again, that makes you start having all those negative thoughts and you start going, okay, things feel really low. It's dark, it's cold, I'm alone, I don't have a lot of support in the community. Everyone's feeling the same way, so I might as well shouldn't complain about it. I'm just going to hunker down and just try to power through. But what happens if you really are struggling?
Yeah.
What do you do,
So true.
right?
And I think that's a great point, Mel. What do you do, right? And I think that's why tonight's episode is so great for the community, because a lot of people are experiencing this and they
Yeah.
don't realize that there's like, oh, well, this is just every winter. But there are
Mhm.
things that we can do, which we will definitely get into a little bit later in the episode tonight. But the perfect storm, did we hit all of the points?
I think we've got the whole storm. It's stormy outside. It's snowing like 2 feet. I can't even get into my car. I can't see anything when I'm driving today. We've got the storm. Now, let's talk about that. The perfect storm of just having that seasonal challenges, winter blues. What's the difference between just the normal winter blues and depression? How do we know we need help? What are those signs, symptoms, and warning signs do you find?
No, and because a lot of them can look the same.
Totally.
You may be lethargic, you may be down, you may not feel like Chantel said, feel like doing anything, so you're hunkering down and you're isolating.
Yeah.
You may not have motivation to do exercise or interact with people, and you may be having a lot of negative thoughts and hopelessness
Mm-hmm.
and helplessness,
Yeah.
right? And those could be temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the difference, is you could have situational
Right.
issues
Yeah.
where maybe you're low,
Yeah.
maybe the season is done, you had lots of hoopla, lots of family around, or
Yeah.
maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
So let me go back. You can really, over the holidays, you can have some really great family time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the low afterwards can be really difficult for some people because their reality kicks in and they go, I feel alone again.
Very true.
Or it could be the opposite.
I think when it comes to your mental health, I think we've come a really long way with mental health in the last decade of like the stigma is starting to reduce, but there's still that stigma there,
Yeah,
right?
that's
So reach out to your family physician
Totally.
if you're feeling that low.
Mhm.
It can't hurt to have
That's
a
very true.
professional opinion. Reach
Mhm.
out to a friend or to a professional
Mhm.
to talk about it. And this is not something that you have to navigate alone.
You shouldn't
So
have
true.
to.
No.
Yeah.
So reaching out to a professional and having that conversation of, is this seasonal,
Mm-hmm.
That's
right?
right.
Or is this something that's more serious?
And there'll be telltale signs as well. If symptoms have persisted for more than a couple of weeks and they're
Yep.
consistently happening, your doctor will kind of look at you and say, okay, maybe this is something that is more of a clinical thing, not necessarily a seasonal thing or an episode thing. Because you can have like depressive feelings, that doesn't
Totally.
mean you're depressed,
Yeah.
right?
That's
There's
a
a
great
big
point.
difference. There's a clinical
Mhm.
depression, but then there's also, I could be having depressive feelings because of everything I'm going through right now. It's
Exactly.
situational,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Very true.
So it is really hard sometimes to understand the
Mhm.
difference between the winter blues and maybe some depression, and maybe there's a little bit of both, but if you don't know how to navigate it, you're not able to be prepared and combat it, work through it,
Yeah.
right?
So true.
So that
Yeah.
is another piece of it. Ask your physician, talk to people in the
Yeah.
community.
And one quick resource too we can mention at Mental Health Commission of Canada, they developed a mental health continuum. I know we've chatted about this
This
before.
is a big one, though.
Talked about teachers, or principals, school admin, and just how we can even be aware of for ourselves, those that we're working with, those that might be leading, people in our family as well. I often use it for parents and teenagers. It's just a quick way to check in. We've got the green, yellow, orange, and red. So
Yeah.
the kind of differentiation between that yellow zone. We all get reacting sometimes. We might feel trouble sleeping, tired, low energy, procrastinating. That's all part of the winter blues, just normal day-to-day life, right?
Right.
When you get into that injured zone, which is more orange, you were seeing more of a pervasive sadness, hopelessness, anxiety,
Yeah.
disrupted sleep, fatigues, aches, pains. that's when you're kind of really reaching that point where it's important to talk to someone.
That's right.
Reach out, ask for help, and how we steward our yellow zone when we're just beginning to experience those symptoms is so important.
Yes.
You know, for me, the first 25 years of my life, I've tried to do things the hard way, just pretend it's not there, stuff it under the rug, power through, just keep going, right? And it works for a while, but then you hit a wall.
Yeah.
And then it's just so tough when you're in the orange and the red. And I always talk to individuals about two things, you know, being okay to not be okay, being real with yourself and where you're at, and inviting others along that journey. Whether it's a close friend, a mental health professional, whatever it might be, but really being able to reach out before we get to that red zone, perhaps, you know, feeling really hopeless, not able to focus at all, exhaustion, and of course, that suicidal ideation piece. And I know as we put out some surveys and we had a bunch of questions around that suicidal ideation piece, in particular for teenagers. So I'll read a couple of them that we got.
Yes.
Maybe we can
Sounds
answer
good.
those for our listeners too. One thing is the teen suicide. What's the main reason that teenagers might be having these thoughts of hurting themselves or suicide? And then also, how can we support that process in terms of staying mentally and physically fit, understanding stress, and really kind of being proactive, maybe even like we talked about with the yellow or orange zone, recognizing those early signs before a teen gets into that place of thinking about hurting themselves or talking about it.
I think going back to that, what are the reasons? I think that's such a complex answer.
It really is.
And it's so different for different people. And the topic of suicide is still very taboo. People still don't feel comfortable having that conversation. I remember first when I started counseling, even being prepared for that suicidal client, even being ready for that, going through the training, when you hear that word, there's something inside that is anxiety provoking. Now, being in the field for a few years, you kind of get used to it, and the more knowledge you have about it. And I think one of the biggest pieces for myself as a professional is understanding that suicide ideation doesn't always mean that they want to end their life.
That's right.
Sometimes it's just about needing an escape from that internal pain, and they just need a break from it and wanting it to slow down, to stop for a little bit.
That's right.
And I think that's one of the hardest parts, because we don't always see the internal struggles of people and that internal conflict. And I think that's an important place to start when having those conversations. What is it that's making you feel this way? And what do you want from this? And you'll often hear people say, I just want a break.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? I just want a break. So I think going back to that, understanding that it's not always about just wanting it to end. It's about the struggle sometimes.
So true.
And if we're not asking the questions and we're not addressing the struggle, then we're missing that opportunity to actually help somebody have that break.
And I think that's wonderfully said. I love everything about what you said. I would say that for parents. Like, it's not just us as professionals. If you're having these conversations with your teens, with your children, with your partner, with your friends, if you could feel comfortable asking these things, it does become normalized to some degree. It's not like you're going to be going around asking people all the time, are you suicidal? However, if you are sensing that somebody has some depressive symptoms and some feelings, how are you feeling? You know, to ask that question is a very difficult one, but once you start learning, like you said, after a while, you do get more comfortable with it. And if you say have a child who has some suicidal ideation, being able to be very forthright with them will get behind the barriers, because sometimes with youth, it's with them being really dysregulated with their emotions. Sometimes it's about they're on medication and there's a medication imbalance, and that's what's causing a suicidal ideation. Or sometimes it could just be, and this is not dismissive or less than, it could be that there's a lot going on in their home or their environment or their school that has just caused them to become more impulsive with their thoughts and their feelings.
It can be situational.
Completely be situational. And then talking it through with a trusted adult, whether it be somebody like us or a parent or an aunt or a guardian, will make all the difference, because they just want to know someone's there for them and will reach out to them and talk to them.
And I think a lot of times people are scared. They're like, I don't know what to say. What if I do ask the question and I say, hey, I've been worried about you a little bit, just wondering if you've been having thoughts of suicide, and they say yes. What do I do then?
That's right.
it's okay to say, you know what, this isn't my area, I'm not really sure, but I will be here with you. Let's find help.
Let's find help.
Let's do it together, right?
That's right.
Being that support person and knowing that, just knowing that you have somebody there to help you navigate the mental health system, because it's not always easy to navigate the mental health system.
Yeah.
As a professional, I still struggle sometimes.
Exactly.
But when you have that support, and it's not about saying the right or wrong thing, it's about the connection and knowing that you're supported in that.
True. Yeah, can you hold space for me? Can you
Yeah.
support me? I know this is your champion at this. There's Chantal, I know Mel is too, but that circle of security.
That's right.
It's not just for young children, but for adults, for teenagers. Can you hold space?
Exactly.
Can you support me in this really difficult moment?
Yes.
And just being present, just being there, I think, is so important.
Because a lot of times we want to shut it down because we get
Yes.
scared.
That's
right?
right,
If they
because our
don't.
own system is starting to get a little bit like, you
Yeah.
feel yourself heightened because
Yeah.
you don't want the other person to be in pain and you're trying to solve it for them.
Right.
And there's a huge myth out there that if you talk about suicide, you increase the risk of it happening.
Good point.
Yeah,
Right?
that's so true.
That is a myth. That is not true.
That is definitely not true. It's actually that isolation, right? That can actually increase the struggle.
Totally.
Once we start supporting and they know that there's someone there to help them through and they don't have to do it alone,
That's right.
that's huge.
So
Yeah.
true.
Being able to reach out and ask for that help and being able to say, yeah, you know what, I don't really know what to do here, but I'll help you navigate the system.
That's right.
Let's reach out to a professional. Let's reach out to a school counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's so important, that support piece, and then seeking to understand. The iceberg, what we're seeing at 10% is, I want to hurt myself. I don't want to be here. But what is that 90% below the surface that we're not seeing for our child or the student that we're supporting, or the adult that we're supporting too?
That's right.
So really understanding the support, getting to really seeking to understand and getting to really get into that story. Like, what is the person's story? What is their journey like? And how can we support them that way? So those 3 S's, I think, are important takeaways for all of us. Using that mental health continuum model, I'd like to use those colors, because sometimes for parents and teens, the teenager doesn't want to tell their parents, oh, I'm being really down today, or don't ask me 1,000 questions.
Right.
So tell me a color, green, yellow, orange, or red.
Yes.
Where are you at today?
Yeah.
And we don't have to ask 20 more questions, I promise.
And I think it's important to recognize that sometimes we don't have the words.
Exactly.
Sometimes we actually don't know what's happening inside, and especially as teenagers when we're navigating that system.
They're still trying to figure it out.
And sometimes it is that dysregulation. You don't know what it is, but something feels off.
That's
and
right.
you don't know how to explain it,
Totally.
right? So the color system is absolutely wonderful.
It's
in
a
that
fantastic system.
Works
And-
great for adults too.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Right.
Actually, and we have done that with some of
Exactly.
some of our staff ones where
Yeah.
we talk to adults about, where are you right now? I'm in the yellow. Okay, but what do I need to do to get out of the yellow and get back into the green?
Yeah.
Right? It's a big piece of it. It's learning how to be self-aware, and that's the piece with all of this, with this depressive
Totally.
mood, with being a little bit lower because of season, maybe overindulging during the Christmas break,
Yeah.
maybe it be from eating too much, drinking a little bit more, whatever it is. Sometimes we get some guilt, and we've spent a lot of money, we've gone over our budget, so all of a sudden January hits, it's cold, we're broke, all of our
Right.
family is gone.
The credit card bills are
Credit
coming
cards
in.
are coming in. We're feeling overwhelmed, and then the stress of going back to school if we are a younger person, or the stress of having kids going back to school.
Totally.
Will it be online? Will it be in person because of COVID? Because did everyone travel at Christmas time? I'm starting to feel my self-world just thinking
Right.
about it,
Yeah.
because what about if everyone travels at Christmas? What is that going to mean, right, in January? So
I think that's another storm cloud in that perfect storm that we can
Yeah.
also put in there, is that the pandemic has
Right.
caused a lot of uncertainty and
That's right.
increases of stress. So especially around flu season,
Yeah.
right? So it definitely is easy to get into that tailspin.
Yeah,
And
sure
I think being able to, I love it, self-awareness. I
So
preach
true.
this all the time. You
Yeah.
can't change what you're not aware of.
That's
Very
right.
true.
Right? So being able to recognize what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like when you go from the green to the yellow, from the yellow to the orange, what are those telltale signs so that you can reach out and ask for support then? Because once you get into that red zone, I don't know, like you kind of become shut down almost.
Well,
true.
yeah, or
Right?
you're in that emotional brain, that thinking brain versus the emotional
Yeah.
brain, right? And so it's very difficult to kind of regulate yourself and be aware still, and be
Yes.
able to do something about it, because you become stuck.
So
Yeah.
true. It's so true. Awareness really is the first step. Understanding that iceberg, not only of the perfect storm in terms of winter blues, depression, we talked about suicide, and there's also that piece of self-harm.
Yeah.
And it's very true that often for individuals too, they want to break free from that emotional pain. I know a lot of individuals who work with it might not even be aware of it, but just understanding that piece as well is important as well.
It really is. It's concerning to think. Sorry, did I interrupt you? Okay.
No.
That's concerning because for some individuals, youth, children, even adults, there are different reasons for it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that a person is suicidal. You could be self-harming for many reasons and has absolutely nothing to do with having suicidal ideation.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be something as simple as, and I say simple, but not so simple, some scratching, right? Or picking at your nails and you're making them kind of raw.
Mm-hmm.
Those are actual forms of self-harm, but may not be what we think about when we think about self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes parents go, worst case scenario, my goodness, my child did that. And oh my goodness, do they want to take their life?
Mm-hmm.
And they may not have any debate, no correlation. That's why we, again, going back to need to be an investigator. We need to find out the root of what's happening with the individual, what has happened, whether it be an adult, a child, youth. You do need to find the underlying reason. And with this perfect storm happening, maybe that is just one way. And self-harm could be in self-medicating.
Very true.
Absolutely.
Right? And this is another piece of this that really important to talk about is we talk about overindulging during the holidays, but there may be people who are drinking more or indulging in things more to numb the pain.
Yeah.
And that can be very challenging for them because they, alcohol is a depressant, which adds to what they're already feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So they're not actually making it better, they're making it worse. And they're tucking away, which means could also lead to anxiety. And we don't want that when you're already feeling some depressive symptoms.
So true.
Yeah, I wanted to just cycle back to self-harm because I think that topic again is one that scare a lot of parents.
So taboo and scary for so many people.
It is, because often minds will go to that place. Like, does this mean that they're wanting to take their own life? And again, being able to recognize what self-harm is and that what, like you said, what's beneath it. But I think when the topic comes up, we often again get dysregulated and we want to shut it down.
Yeah.
And I think self-harm is a really hard topic for teens to talk about because it's one of those feelings that they don't really understand it themselves.
Right.
And there's so much shame that comes with self-harming that it's so hard to talk about because they don't, nobody wants to engage in those behaviors.
Right.
It's just that it's that escape again from that emotional pain, that need for relief. And so understanding the intention behind it can often make those conversations a little bit easier. I'm not going to say easy because those are difficult conversations.
Yes.
And I mean, I know that as a counselor, when I have those conversations with people, like my heart hurts for them.
Of course.
Right?
Absolutely.
And sometimes I look at even children's faces and they're talking about these hard topics, and I think about being a parent and having to look into your own child's face.
That would be heartbreaking.
And hear their pain and not know how to help, right?
Wanting to fix it but can't. So you feel powerless and helpless as well as a parent.
So true.
Right?
Yeah.
So it really is, it's a difficult time of year for a lot of people, but that's why reaching out is the most important piece of this.
Absolutely.
And we all cope with life in different ways. And for all of us, just being real about our coping mechanisms.
Yep.
We all have that when life gets tough.
Mine's chocolate.
Right? It's probably not too bad of one, right? Yeah, we know people maybe, whether it be alcohol, marijuana, exercise, food, whatever it might be, we all have different ways of coping.
Yeah.
And, things in moderation can often be okay, but just kind of understanding our patterns of what we get into when life gets stressful, what do we turn to, what do we cope with, and just being real of that awareness piece, as you mentioned, Chantel. I think a big thing is this theme we're talking about, the perfect storm, and we're talking about darkness. We all go through darkness. We go through dark days this time of year. Practically it's dark outside, but all of us, we go through dark seasons and light seasons, and just being okay with that journey. It's tough sometimes, and sometimes we have to do a few things to cope, to get by, but we don't want to live or stay in that place.
I really like that. You don't want to live or stay in that place. So you have that acceptance piece, and then you go, okay, I don't want to live here.
So true.
I realize this is what has to happen, so I'll be okay with that. But what do you do, Joel? What do you do?
That's a great question. And a big thing we want to structure this last part of our talking is moving towards the light.
That's it.
Right? So
love
asking
that.
yourself, right,
So
we're in the darkness.
metaphorically,
How do we
yeah.
move towards the light? As
Yeah.
spring comes, it gets lighter outside.
Yeah.
But we can already start that journey.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of hope, having light at the end of the tunnel. I've been through seasons myself where I felt very depressed and hopeless and dark. But having some light at the end of the tunnel is really helpful. So I think step one is being okay to be in the darkness, being okay with wherever I'm at, recognizing what I'm doing to cope. It might be for a moment, it might be for a season, but it's not going to be forever. Not
That's
getting
right.
stuck in a sentence, not getting stuck in this little short chapter of my life, but recognizing there's a greater story unfolding.
Oh, I like that. I love your metaphors, and I love the way you say that. That's really great. So there's a story unfolding, and they just have to wait for it. It's going to happen.
Totally.
Not allow yourself to get caught in the helplessness and hopelessness of the darkness.
Yeah.
And that non-judgmental
Mhm.
self-awareness. It's okay to not be okay. And I
Yeah.
think you kind of said that earlier, and it reminded me of that toxic positivity.
Right.
That is a huge
Yeah.
topic right now,
Right.
where everybody's like, no, it's great, it's going to be fine, it's going to
Yeah.
be great. It's okay that it's not okay right now.
Totally.
That's right.
This has been a difficult few years. I know, Mel, in the school system, this has been a hard year for
It's
a
been
lot of people.
very challenging.
For students and
Yeah.
families and staff.
Yes.
And it can be hard when you go into work and everybody's saying, oh, no, it's going to be great. We just need to get through it. It's going to be fine.
It's like, oh no,
Yeah.
just be real here, be real. It's
Yeah.
like,
And
ugh.
that's, yes, be real
Yeah.
about it, because that's where you get that connection with other
Yes.
people,
Mhm.
understanding that you might be in the same place, and it's okay
Yeah.
Mhm.
that you're not okay in this moment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because nobody's okay all the time. We all have those highs and lows,
Yeah.
and pretending they're not there
Yeah,
or that it's fine is actually unhelpful.
totally.
And
it's an
unhealthy.
It's an incongruent message, because they know you're not doing well, but you're saying you're fine. So
I'm fine.
yeah, exactly. I'm fine. What do you say? Don't be a Ross, right?
Yeah, I'm a Ross. I'm fine. I'm
Yeah.
fine.
But it's incongruent. So when someone's telling you they're fine and they're not, you're thinking, okay, I can't be myself with them. They're
Mhm.
not in a place to receive that honesty. So
Totally.
you
Yeah.
hold it in,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's another piece of this, is we have to be willing to recognize that part. Talking to other people and recognizing if you're not going to be okay, that it's okay to not be okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
But where does it get to a point where it starts to deplete you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the concern, is when you that toxicity in the other way,
Yeah.
where you're talking to people, but
Yeah.
it's not in a purposeful, productive, energizing way.
Yeah.
It's actually sapping your energy, and
So
you're
true.
walking away feeling less than because of the conversation.
Yes.
So that's a
think-
concern.
A huge part is find your people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have my people at work, I have my
Yeah.
people in my personal life,
So true.
and we have those vent sessions, but then you move on,
Yeah.
right? It's that validation of it, but then it's that looking towards the light. So
Yeah.
find people, surround yourself with people that are going to help you do that,
Mhm.
right? That you can be real with and honest with, and then they can be real and honest with you, and they can say, okay, Chantal, that's enough.
That's
Like,
right.
This is no longer helpful, and
Yeah.
not in a harsh, like, I don't want to hear it anymore. Like, this is no longer helpful for you,
That's
Yeah.
right.
So being able to have your people recognize with you, and I think that's a huge part of going through this storm, is that you don't have to do it alone.
So true.
And a lot of people often feel like they do.
Because they feel ashamed, they feel embarrassed by it, they feel less than, they feel weak because they can't cope. They feel
So true.
If everybody else is fine,
Yeah.
why am I not fine?
Right? Well, we're all not fine. Fake it till you make it is not a
Right?
real thing. It's fake.
Yeah.
it is.
That
Yes.
whole thing is fake. But I love what we're talking about, because we're going to give you a practical handout. You all know me. I love my practical handouts
Yes.
of
It's a
7
good thing.
different areas of how we can move to the light. And that is one of them. Relationally, we have these questions for our viewers to reflect on and think about being real about the darkness. But what does it look like to move towards the light? And one area is relationships. And
Yeah.
the question I have on here for relationships, or a relational vision for 2022, is the givers and takers. Who are those givers who energize me?
Mhm.
How can I
Yes.
move towards them? And who are those takers? And we all have takers in our lives.
There
and
are.
we're supposed to support them in
Of
small
course.
doses.
In
Yeah.
small doses,
Right?
exactly.
Yes.
But who are those ones I just need to be have a little bit stronger boundaries with in
Yes.
that area? So
Yeah.
that's one area, relational. We've got physical, mental, emotional, family, vocational, hobbies and recreation, and spiritual, just for fun. A real practical one is spiritual. how can we ask ourselves in 2022, what does it look like? Whether it's mindfulness, meditation, whatever those exercises are for those who might be less spiritual or consider themselves less spiritual. What do you do to relax?
That's right.
How do you recharge for 20 minutes a day? I know for me, my wife's saying, Joel, you work so hard. And I say, I work hard, but I recharge hard. I break hard. At the end of my day, I just turn it all off, and I'm doing things that are recharging and filling me up.
I love that. Work hard, break hard.
Right.
That's my new one.
I know, I just came up with that last week.
Work hard, break hard.
Yeah. So that's a key area. Another one's family. How do we steward that area? What does it look like to move to the light? So a question for both of you here is, what does it look like to grow in that area or develop some hope? Because we talked about this season being dark, literally and emotionally as well. So one thing that can be part of that light is our families.
Right, it absolutely. And you can really fill you with hope. Oftentimes, even in families, the children go in their silos. They all go in their bedrooms and they all do their own thing. They're on their own video games, and mom and dad are watching their own TV shows around their devices. Maybe mom and dad aren't even having a communication. Social media down, TV, everything, in the same room, talking, having a meal together. Find something to talk about. Do a meal together, as in you're prepping the meal together, but spending time and talking about the know-nothing stuff. It doesn't have to be the heavy hitter stuff.
Totally.
It's just the stuff that, how was your day? Oh, and they say, and if you have a teenager, they're probably just going to go fine. So if you ask that kind of question, you're going to get just a fine. You're not going to get a big answer. So you have to learn to be a little bit more elaborate and a little bit more creative. But it is about connecting, because connecting produces those feel-good chemicals in your body, connection, and then all of a sudden your brain is firing all these wonderful chemicals, and you're feeling calmer, you're feeling at ease, you're feeling belonging again, and that's going to help bring up that mood, and it's going to make you feel like you could trust it again. And I think that's the piece, because you got to be able to trust it, because when you get that low mood, you stop trusting that there's any hope.
Yeah. So
and it doesn't take a lot of time.
It doesn't.
Right? Just being intentional about it.
Yeah.
Because sitting on your cell phones.
That's right.
That's not time together.
No, it's depleting.
And for the last little bit, I'm going to be completely honest, and I'm usually honest with my clients, and I'll be honest with my viewers now. There for a little bit, when it started to get really dark, I would go home from work and I would sit on my couch, and I was tired, and I would have my cell phone in my hand. And my husband would come home from work, and I barely looked up. And he would go do his routine, and then we would go to bed. And there was little communication there. And as it went on, I started to realize, like, oh my goodness, like, what? Like, I'm feeling really down lately.
Right.
And then I realized, like, I need to connect. I'm a huge person on connection, like relationships, and that family, right? That family piece, and an intentional 20 minutes, right?
It doesn't take much. Intentional 20 minutes.
Yeah, an intentional 20 minutes. So finding that time over the holidays and over the winter, because it gets hard, right? Because we do want to isolate. We do want to hibernate. I'm like a bear.
Right.
I want my snacks. I want my blanket, and I'm good.
Rest.
But not everybody has a family that they can do this with.
So true.
So they have to reach out to friends, because maybe their family is halfway across the world. So maybe they're reaching out to friends. Maybe they're reaching out to a colleague. Maybe they're reaching out to a line, like a support line.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Because they know they're getting low, and they just need to talk to another human being who wants to listen.
Yeah.
It is important that everyone feels they have a right to do that, and they can do it.
Yeah.
They do not have to remain isolated.
Well, let's talk about the supports available, support lines and things like that, even right now as we're on the topic. But for anyone who's feeling down, depressed, winter blues, that 10 minutes a day, I said, spend time with someone every day. There's individuals I've worked with said, like, you just need to have someone, even if it's going out to Timmy's and just hanging out there for 20 minutes, whatever it is. Getting out and doing something is so powerful. But tell us a little bit about the supports we have available for those who are listening too.
Well, we have some other solutions. They have a crisis line, so with that you can call at any time, and it's 24 hours a day. So if you're feeling you need to talk, you're feeling low, you can call them. I'm trying to remember the phone number. Do you have the number there, Joel?
Let's see if I can track it down.
780-743-HELP 4573.
Which spells out help, right?
Spells out help.
There you go. Very good.
So SOS is a great one for that. They can help. And then, of course, there's mental health. There's a Powder Drive. So if you're feeling low and you just want to connect with someone and have a conversation, you can go to the walk-in on Powder Drive at any time, and They will welcome you.
So good.
And we will also put in the information of this episode, we'll put some more links. We'll have some links to suicide prevention.
Yes.
So how to have those conversations, some tools there. And we'll also have the local crisis line, but we'll also have national crisis line on there, the Canadian one. And then we'll have text helplines as well, because I have a lot of adolescents clients that like the text one.
Yeah, that is a real good one, because they just want to connect somehow, but they're not really wanting to be on the phone with someone.
Yeah.
So a text works well for them.
Yeah.
So we'll have different resources available in the information. A big part is knowing that there's so many resources out there, and you don't have to be alone in this season.
Yeah, so true. And it might just be your darkest season, but it might be the season where you actually find hope and begin to move towards the light.
Yeah.
And so I encourage you to check out our little handout. My wife and I do it every time this time of year. We start the year every year the same way. Let's look at these 7 areas and just kind of think about what do we want to look at this year. It's not about setting SMART goals or to-do lists, but it's a little bit about dreaming.
Yeah, this is not your typical New Year's resolution per se, but that it is about moving forward. You have to be purposeful in what you're thinking about the future.
Yeah, and what does it look like to move towards that light, towards that hope in this year?
And how do you know when you're moving towards it? Right? Again, going back to that self-awareness. It's one thing to have something set out in your mind, but how do you know if you're moving towards it? Right? So being intentional on that reflection as well.
And maybe attainable.
Yes.
Right? So small, attainable goals.
So true.
That's the biggest piece, so that you're feeling rewarded for the simple things you're doing, right?
Yeah.
But you are moving forward. You're not spinning. You're not alone. You're not stagnant. You're moving forward. And that's the definition of, if you're feeling that depressive feeling, that hopelessness and helplessness, the first step tends to be the hardest.
Yeah.
So get that momentum going.
Very
That
true.
inertia, right?
Yeah.
And then it'll get easier and easier with each step.
It's so true. And just being real, right? It's been said, there's a kind of a wise saying that talks about hope deferred. You really can struggle. It causes mental and emotional struggle.
It does.
So just being real about that, whatever you're going through today, knowing that, hey, this might be the low point. It might be, rock bottom, or just that part when you're climbing a mountain where you go through that valley and you're like, oh, this is tough.
Yeah.
But don't get stuck in that sentence. Don't get stuck in that moment. Look at the journey and be able to find hope, that light at the end of the tunnel to keep going, I think is really key. As we kind of wrap things up for this year in terms of 2021, what kind of just final things do you have on your hearts and minds for our viewers as we wrap up this year and think about transitioning and hope, being real about the darkness and transitioning to hope 2022?
I have to be honest, this episode felt raw.
Yeah.
There was something raw about this episode and real. And I think that's what people need right now. And I think that's one thing that when I think about next year, and my hope for next year is continuing to bring information and resources and episodes like this to our listeners. And I'm hoping that this is something that they can tune into and say, oh, yes, okay, yes, that feels right. When you were saying that it took you 25 years, and we're laughing because it's real. And I think for so long we had this facade that professionals had it all together, but we struggle too.
Heck
right?
no.
Yeah,
That's
and so I think wrapping up tonight's episode, I think that's something that I have hope for in the future, is hoping that our experience and sharing our struggles as well and being real can help others reach out and find that validation, I guess.
Beautifully said, Chantal. Really, really nicely said. I think I would just add to that I think our viewers will probably be watching this in January, so being mindful of that. We're recording in December. I think for moving forward, that the more we could start being real with our viewers, maybe our viewers will start coming back with some really, really deep questions about what kind of things they really want to address. And they feel comfortable with asking those questions. And then we as a team can kind of break it down and talk about it in our own way. And like you said, to validate, because we're all going through every single thing. Everything we've talked about so far, we all have shared life experience. We have the books. They call it like the book smarts. But the reality of it is we're living it, and we're going through it too. And we really need our people to help us out just as much
So
as
true.
as everyone else. So
Yeah.
we need to learn to lean on each other
Mhm.
and trust that you can get through it.
Yeah, so
Period.
true. So true. And we just want to thank you all for tuning in as usual. Please do reach out to us. We'd love to hear just some of these questions and continue just to go deeper in some of these topics as well. What's on my heart tonight as I think about this season of darkness to light, of winter blues, is just those individuals I do know who are just going through the darkness.
Yeah.
And you're not alone. Whatever you're in, whatever you're going through, just know that there's supports, whether it's some of the stuff we've talked about today, people to reach out to. But I can just think of those times in my life, those darkest moments where you
Yes.
thought, well, why am I here? What is this
Right.
life about? What's going on? And it was in those darkest moments that I felt like the light has come the most. It's in those experiences that you're like, wow, okay, this is who I am. Okay, this is what my life is about. So if you're on one of those journeys like I've been or like some of my friends are now, I just encourage you that there's purpose in the process.
Purpose in
Right.
the process. I love
Right.
your little
We're on a
jingle.
roll
Right.
tonight.
Okay, it's true though, but pain without purpose leads to hopelessness. So if you're just
Yes.
feeling the pain and just feeling
Yes.
hopeless, we've got to find that purpose.
Yeah.
What is that purpose in this process, in this journey?
Love it.
What a beautiful note to end on.
Mhm.
Because
Your mental health matters.
Right, we got it. Okay.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Please reach out to us if you have questions or comments about today's topic, or questions or suggestions for future topics. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, we encourage you to reach out to local agencies for support, as our podcast is not a substitute for counseling. If you require immediate support, please contact the crisis line or your local hospital.